very quickly. Mark chapter 8, verse 22. And he comes to Bethsaida, and they bring a blind man unto him and besought him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand. Notice, by the hand. He didn't lay hands on him. He took him by the hand. Now watch, at this point. And led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes, excuse me, had spit on his eyes, and had put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw aught or saw anything. And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. So you notice here, now this is Jesus. He lays hands on the man, spit in his eye, basically. And he said, what do you see? And the man said, I see trees and men as trees walking. So in other words, I see better. I'm not totally blind. I see something. But he wasn't totally healed either. So now we're talking about something that's generally called healing by process or healing by progression or progressive healing. Now notice, after that he put his hands again upon his eyes and made him look up. And he was restored and saw every man clearly. Now notice, Jesus himself had to minister to this man twice. So when he ministered to him twice, now there's, I've heard all kinds of stuff. People say all kinds of things of why Jesus had to minister to this man twice, and that it was important that he took him out of the city to get away from the unbelief. And I've heard all these things, all of which are not mentioned in Scripture. Right? None of that's in Scripture, and it is simply human reasoning trying to come up with something. Okay, having ministered to literally myself personally, laying hands on well over 250,000 people in the last 15 years. You learn some things by doing. And there can be a point when you lay hands on a person, there is an aspect in you that you're pushing. I wasn't planning on getting into this too much here, but whenever you grab somebody by the hands, as you've seen us minister, we take people by the hands, and we don't always lay hands on their head or things like that. We'll just take them by the hand. It's an easy way to do it. That way there's no problems in it. There's no improprieties or anything. You just take them by the hands. When a person is believing, there are times when they're believing, and then there's times when they're believing and pulling. And whenever you take them by the hands, you can feel the pull. And Kenneth Hagin used to call it the pull of faith, actually. I remember him saying it one time. And so there's an aspect whenever they can pull. But then there's also times whenever you take their hands and they're just being receptive. They're not really pulling themselves, but they want to receive, but they don't know how to pull. So instead, as you start to minister, you will push. Because now you can just hold their hands and let it flow. And it will flow automatically. Or you can take them by the hand and you can actually push. It's a difference. Most of that comes, you say, how do you know what's what? Honestly, most of that comes from just experience of doing it. As you practice, as you participate in it, and you do it on a regular basis, you will learn. Now with me, trying to describe, I don't want to say the feeling, because there's not always a feeling associated with it, but it is most similar for me like breathing. It's almost like if I'm holding something and I want to give it to you, then there's this automatic thing where you see it's kind of a semicircular, you kind of go up and over. Not that that matters, but I'm just saying that's, in my mind, that's kind of the way I feel. It's like when I hold someone by the hand and I'm pushing and I want to get them healed, then it's almost like I'm going, just like that. Just, you hear that? And it's just a matter of, it's just like breathing, and it's as if you are handing something over to somebody. So when you take them by the hands, that's what you feel. It's almost like, and you can just, it's not in breathing, but it is like breathing, which it makes sense because it's spirit, which is pneuma, which is also the Hebrew word for, or Greek word for breath. And so it's natural that it would be that way. Don't make it some mystical thing. I'm just saying generally it's a matter of transfer. You know, whenever you start to hold, if you're holding something you're going to give to somebody else, you take it, you know when you hand it to them and when they take it. That's all it is. And so when you take someone by the hands and you want to push to them. Now there are times when you do it like this, I hope you're understanding this, but when you're doing this, that it's very simple, it's very easy, and you don't feel like you're pushing, you just feel like you're giving, right? And there's a difference. But then there's other times when I will take someone by the hand that I will literally, it's a settling down, and it's almost like there is a push that you can feel in and of yourself. And if you watch me a lot of times when I minister, generally when I do that, I'll take them by the hands, and a lot of times I'll even bow my head, and I'm not bowing to pray or anything like that. I'll just close my eyes, so I'm not looking at them. That way I'm not doing any judgment by the eyes. I'm not judging by what I see. And many times I will even turn my head to the side. Mainly, we're just going to be blunt here. Many times I will do that, and the reason I turn my head to the side and down is because if you put your head down, if you're ministering to a female, you want to make sure where your eyes are, right? Because everybody doesn't dress modest, okay? And so there are times when I will look away just because it would be inappropriate if I'm looking straight down at their chest, right? And so I will close my eyes and I'll turn my head, and when I do that, I literally push the Spirit of God that is in me into them. And when I do that, that's the minute I know that it's done, that's when I decide it's done, right? Now, most of this is harder to explain than it is to do, and takes a whole lot longer to explain than it actually does to do. So, but that's like telling somebody, tie your shoes. Well, how do I do that? Well, you could tie it before I could tell you exactly how to do it, right? So, but I want to read through some of these things, some notes we put. First off, healing should be immediate, as we said. And there are several parts or pieces to any healing, right? Now, first, there is the part that the person ministering plays, and we've been talking about some of that. Second, there's the part that the sick person plays in receiving healing, right? And we will talk about a little bit about that in just a moment. But there is healing, and notice, that is given from one person to another. And that's Mark 16:18. That's believers lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. That healing doesn't fall from heaven. It is in the person, in the believer, and it is transferred from the believer to the sick, right? It doesn't fall on the sick. It's not like you're pointing them out and God drops it on them. He pours out of his Spirit into them. So literally you receive his Spirit and then you give it to them. Peter said in Acts 3, such as I have, give I thee. So he had something that he gave to the man. Now, notice, as we said, there is healing that is given from one person to another, Mark 16:18. Then there is also healing that is received for oneself. In other words, that this is you get it for yourself. You can get it through someone else, or you can get it sitting at home, just between you and God, right? Often, and now I'll give you two examples of that. One is Matthew chapter 9, verse 20, and Luke chapter 8, verse 44. Often, though, healing that was received through someone else's faith can be lost. Okay, now, what that means is this. Many times when a person is ministered to by someone else, and it's the minister's faith that gets it done, then when that person leaves, the enemy comes back because they know that that person has left the presence of the minister that knew what to do to get it off them. And many times the enemy will come back to that person, and the person will think, oh, I must have done something wrong. I must have done something that caused God to take away my healing, or I must have done something that caused me to lose my healing. And that's not true. Generally what happens is the enemy knows you got it through somebody else's faith, so he comes back to jump on you, and he makes you sick again. And if it was the same spirit, it could be the same sickness. So it's not losing your healing, it's that he gets you sick again, right? That's the